Welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited that you're joining me for my 2022 bullet journal setup. This setup is going to be something that is really simple and something that is going to be really easy for any beginner to recreate as well. And I know it can feel quite intimidating to start a brand new bullet journal, but as you'll see in this video, I'll make a couple of mistakes and I'll also show you a lot of different ways that you can cover up or recover those mistakes as well. So let's just have fun and get started with our 2022 bullet journal setup. For this year, I'm going to be using another bullet journal from Archer & Olive. This one is in the A5 size and it has some 160 GSM crisp white dot grid paper. As for the colors, I'm going to be using the two brown pens that is included in the Acrylograph Cool Fall set. However, if you don't have the Acrylograph pens, you can easily replace this for the Tombow brush pens in the shade 942 and 696. So it really depends whether you prefer using the brush pens or the paint pens, because I use the two interchangeably and the colors are really similar. Even though I've been bullet journaling for over a year, sometimes I can still feel intimidated to start on a blank page, especially if it's on a brand new bullet journal. If you're someone that is currently feeling intimidated to get started with bullet journaling, I find something that really helps is to just do all of your sketches in pencil first. It gives you a lot of reassurance to know that not everything is permanent, and it gives you another chance to edit any of your sketches in case you're not really happy with what you drew. Another tip that I like to give people is to know that there's also erasable pens out there. There's a brand called Frixion that creates erasable pens in a lot of different colors, and this can give you another sense of security to know that even when you're using your pens, you can still erase and edit everything just as if you were using a pencil. And even if you do make a mistake, you can always just slap on another piece of paper on top of it or even cover it up with some white pen. That's something that you're gonna see me do later on in this video, so don't worry about having to get it all perfect on your first try. And to be honest, sometimes our best pages comes from our unplanned mistakes, so don't worry about getting it perfect and just have fun with it. So for my 2022 bullet journal cover page, I decided to start with a beige square, and then within that square I decided to draw these two irregular shapes and colored one in brown and the other one in white. As you can see, this is really perfect for any beginner because the shapes are super abstract and there's no perfect or right or wrong way when it comes to these shapes. Once I'm done with my abstract background, I also want to take my black Tombow Fudenosuke brush pen and created some floral designs on top of it. I'm also going to color in the floral details in black to give a lot of contrast to this 2022 bullet journal cover page. I also really want to take the time to thank you guys on Instagram for helping me settle on this theme. Honestly, I was so conflicted between the floral details and the minimalist landscape for a really long time, and to be honest, I still really love both of these ideas so much that I think I'm gonna go with the minimalist landscape for my January bullet journal setup and really just go all out on the floral details for the 2022 bullet journal setup. Because I felt like it was a little awkward to just have this little square floating around, I decided to add a little bit of details around the corner to kind of create the border as if it was a stamp that is on my cover page. I'm also going to use a light gray Tombow brush pen to add a little bit of shadow to the bottom and to the right of this border. And even though it's such a small and simple detail, I really find that it helps to give your drawings a little bit more dimension and make it pop even more in your bullet journal. For the next part, I'm also going to create a small line as a guide so I know where is the exact center of the page, and then I'm also going to use a stencil to help me guide write the numbers 2022 so that it's perfectly centered and evenly sized for my cover page. If you're also someone that likes to use stencils in your bullet journal, I find that holding it down with some washi tape has been really helpful for me to make sure that I get the best use out of my stencils. This is actually one of my favorite stencils, and that's because it's a little bit more transparent, and that really helps me see a lot of the pencil sketches under the stencil, and I just find that to be really helpful. It was also really affordable as well, which is a great bonus, and if you're interested in any of the tools that I'm using for this bullet journal setup, make sure to check the description down below. The next thing that I want to do in my bullet journal setup is to create the grid spacing guide. Now, I got this idea from Jenny's Sun Studio, and what she did is that she created these pop-up tabs for her grid spacing guide, and I thought that was absolutely genius because this way you can always have the tabs visible to you no matter what page you're on when you're creating your bullet journal. And it's so helpful because it avoids having to do a lot of the flipping back and forth between your grid spacing guide and whatever page that you're trying to set up. And if you're completely new to bullet journaling and you have absolutely no idea what a grid spacing guide is, basically it's just a tool for you to visualize the ways that you can evenly divide your page. And if you don't feel like doing any math in your head and you also have an A5 size notebook, feel free to just copy the measurements that I have here, and that should work for you as well if you also have 38 squares from the top to the bottom of your bullet journal page. Once you're done with the vertical section, I'm also going to repeat the same thing but horizontally. I actually made a mistake the first time and miscounted the squares, so I just flipped the paper over and recounted the squares. And as you'll see shortly, I also made another mistake and made an extra little line in the middle. So what I'm going to do is just use a little bit of white pen to cover it up and act as if it never happened. Again, if you also have a bullet journal that is 26 squares from right to left, you can also copy the same exact measurements that I have here for your grid spacing guide. Once you're done with creating the grid spacing guide, I like to just round off the corners so that whenever you're flipping it back and forth, it doesn't get annoying and you don't have to deal with any sharp edges. Then I like to just take a small washi tape and just use that to glue it onto the back cover of my bullet journal. And it might take a couple of tries for you to get the perfect location, so try to make sure that all of your tabs can close properly, and try to open another page in your bullet journal with the tabs open just so you could see if it's properly aligned and if you can still see all of the details when you're on to another page. Something that I also always like to include in my bullet journal setups is also a color guide or a pen test page. However, I'm not gonna do so in this bullet journal setup because if you saw in my Archer and Olive haul video, I actually created some of this pen test on a separate piece of paper, and I'm just gonna include that in the back pocket of my bullet journal. And I find this to be really helpful because if ever I'm finished with this bullet journal, I can then just take all of these pen test paper and bring it on with me to my next bullet journal. One of the other pages that I consider to be essential as part of a bullet journal setup is the future log. Basically, a future log is a space where you can keep track of all of your future months, and you can also use this page as a way to log down any future events, any deadlines, or any important upcoming events. And even though I'm someone that typically uses my phone or a digital calendar when it comes to any upcoming events, I still find it really useful to have in my bullet journal because whenever I'm doing a bullet journal setup, I usually want to use that time to also take a break from any screens or any digital tools. And so by having all of the calendars in the first page of my bullet journal, it's a really convenient place for me to have a reference without using any phones or computers when I'm doing my bullet journal setups. And because I wasn't really in the mood to write all of the individual dates for every single month of the year, I decided to just draw the outlines of what the monthly calendar would look like. And this already gives me all of the information I need, such as when the month starts and when the month ends. So this is definitely more than enough for me to have in my future log. So unfortunately, I lost a little bit of footage here, but I wanted to show you that I actually glued another paper on top of my bullet journal just because I wasn't happy with my original lettering and I wanted to cover it up. I also lost the footage where I created the Dutch door for this future log layout, but don't worry because we have another Dutch door layout coming up soon. That way you'll know the exact step-by-steps on creating a Dutch door layout for your bullet journal, so you can also include it for your bullet journal setup as well. One of my favorite things about having a Dutch door layout is that you only need to decorate it once and it's gonna show up on both pages if you decorate the section that isn't cut out. And so what I'm gonna do is draw some abstract shapes. They're kind of like beanbag shapes if you want to think about it that way. And then again, I'm also gonna create some floral or leaf designs, and I'm gonna just randomly create some branches, color some of them with leaves, and I also want to create some smaller branches and color in some white flowers as well. Now I noticed that the white flowers only looked good if it was showing on top of the color. If not, it doesn't really show that there's anything there, and the branch itself kind of just looks awkward on its own. So that's why for my next floral design, I'm gonna make sure that all of the short branches with the white flowers really just show up on the colored background. And so I really wanted to make my floral design a little bit more centered and really more overlapping with all of the colors, and anything that goes on top of the white page, I wanted to make sure that they were colored in black so that they're a bit more visible and they're not just awkward branches sticking out of nowhere. Because I felt like the page was looking a little bit empty, or it was kind of just missing something, I decided to add a little bit of outline or shadow to the lettering of the future log. And so what I did is that I took the same exact brush pen that I used to make the brush lettering, but take the other end and kind of use that to create a little bit of shadow outlines to the lettering. I find that this helps to add a little bit more dimension, and it really did make it feel a little bit less empty for my liking. So I'm super excited about this next spread. This is the first time that I'm including a layout like this for my bullet journal setup, and it's going to be a when did I last page. Now this page is really a place for me to track a couple of habits that I want to implement more often for my day-to-day life, and so I thought that having a tracker for the overall year is really going to help me see the frequency of how much I do these habits and help me realize how much more I need to do these items. For example, I know that when I get super carried away with work, I tend to neglect self-care or just cleaning my area, and so I want to be really mindful and make sure that I don't neglect these habits for too long of a time. And so what I wanted to do to prepare this when did I last spread is I would do a number from 1 to 31 vertically, and then I would just write a letter for each month of the year horizontally. And then I also want to draw two different icons so that I can track two different habits in the same column. And to spice the spread up a little bit more, I'm also gonna turn this into a Dutch door layout. So I'm just gonna cut out the portion of the paper that is on top of the table and just make sure to cut it off fully and detach it completely from my bullet journal notebook. I love having a Dutch door layout because you only have to decorate your header once, and so I just find this really convenient whenever you're doing a spread that is taking up more than 2 pages and you don't want to recreate the header each and every time. And if this is a layout that you're also interested in doing for your bullet journal, some other different ways that you can customize it to your lifestyle is instead of having 2 different icons, you can also use different color codings for the different habits that you want to track in your bullet journal. You can also play around with the different ways that you color in the shape. So for example, let's say you are using a square, you can play around with how you want to color in the square. Maybe it's completely filled in, maybe you want to draw some horizontal lines or create a checkered line. It's completely up to you, and there's so many variations that you can do for this spread. I also want to give a shout out to Create with Kate for inspiring this idea. She did something similar in one of her Dutch door videos for her habit tracker, and so I was really inspired to do something similar for my bullet journal setup. The next spread that we're gonna create in our bullet journal setup is going to be a monthly themes page. And I'm already loving this grid spacing tab because I'm pulling it out right now and it's already so helpful. And so for this spread, I really wanted to create a square for each month of the year and have a section where I can just keep track of all of the themes that I have for every single month of the year. And because I'm trying out a lettering style that I don't typically use, I'm just gonna trace everything out in pencil first and use that as a guide before I start to color it in with any markers or pens. I'm super excited about this spread in general because this is something that I've never included in my bullet journal setups before, but I think it can be really interesting to see how my themes have changed throughout the different months, and I think it's just a fun way to kind of have a glimpse of all of the themes in your bullet journal all in one page. I was also really curious to see if there was a specific color that I usually use in all of my themes, and so I thought that this page is gonna be a really fun page to have for my bullet journal setup. And honestly, it just feels surreal to be doing a 2022 bullet journal setup right now. It just feels like 2021 didn't even happen. I felt like it passed by really quickly and really slowly at the same time, which is such a weird way to think about it. I don't know, I just feel like I lost all concept of time, and it just feels like the weeks and months have been passing by really fast. The other day I saw a quote on Instagram and it said, "The days are long but the years are short," and I've never related to that so much more in my life before. Sometimes I can feel like I'm having the longest day, but then you blink and then the year is already over. And I don't know if I'm the only one that's been feeling this way, so let me know how you've been feeling for 2021, and let me know if you also feel like your 2021 flashed by in the blink of an eye. But regardless of all of that, I'm really excited for 2022. I have a long list of video ideas that I really can't wait to share with you. The only thing is I'm just really bad at managing my time, and I know it's super ironic because I'm so into bullet journaling, but my struggle is that I have a really hard time setting boundaries, and that really affects how I manage my time. So I hope that's something I can work on in 2022, and I'd love to hear what you're excited for your 2022. Thank you so much for tuning in to my 2022 bullet journal setup. If you're a bullet journal beginner and you enjoy watching bullet journal videos that are focused on the functionality of your bullet journal, definitely make sure to check out this video I have on the 8 different types of weekly spreads. I think it's going to give you a lot of ideas on a lot of the different ways that you can customize your weekly spreads, because that was definitely the biggest thing that I struggled with when I was first getting started with bullet journaling. So I hope that video gives you a lot of ideas and inspiration, and I hope to see you there. Thank you so much for watching.